Hi, I'm Kabrina Budwell, and you're about to experience the best way to create a thriving creator business online from other creators just like you, who are making a full-time living doing what they love. We are here to help you create a sustainable business that helps you more than survive, but thrive. Get ready, because this is the first creator podcast to give you clarity, strategy, and tactical solutions to position yourself in the market, create systems that convert, and harness your influence to scale your community. Welcome to the Top Shelf Creator Podcast. Hey there, everybody. Thank you for joining us this week. I am here with Braxton Wood, who is a career coach, and we have had some phenomenal conversations so far. And so I'm so excited to get to know you a little bit better and for you to show us from a creator economy perspective how to create the careers that we want, whether that's freelancing, getting into corporate, being a creator in any capacity. And I'd love to start with you giving us a little bit more about who you are and what you really want to share as far as your big message and your mission.
Yeah, thank you for having me, by the way. It's great to be here. So a little bit about me. One of the things that defines me is that I have no formal education at all. I didn't even graduate high school. And in a way, that has very much been a big springboard for me in my entire career. So I kind of went the traditional route of having a career where I worked for typical companies. I've done a lot of different things because I just didn't know what I wanted to do until I was in my mid-20s. And then when I finally did realize what I wanted to do, everything took off. And so I actually, where a lot of people would think that I was at a huge disadvantage for not even having high school to an education to fall back on, much less a college degree. It was actually a big plus for me and a big advantage for me, because a lot of employers and things like that saw how self-directed I was and things like that. So that's kind of what defines me. And in terms of what I do now for my businesses as a creator, it's just continued on into and evolved into what it is now.
Yeah, I love that. And so what are some of the challenges that you've come across? Because there's a lot of people within our community who don't have a formal education. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us tend to hear, oh, well, you need to go to college. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to check off all these boxes. So I love how you come at it from such a positive, here's all the things that I learned because I had to do it, quote unquote, the hard way of what most people would say, but really probably the easier way if we're being honest with ourselves. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that have come up, and how have you been able to spin that in your favor?
Yeah, this is a question that I encounter a lot, both as a creator with my content online and in my career coaching business. A lot of people suffer from imposter syndrome, right? Like we all do. It's kind of human nature. And people like me who don't have any education, even more so, suffer from it. And the thing that I've learned, to answer your question, is that there is so much value and so much joy almost in taking the road less traveled, that it's kind of become my mission to help the world understand that. I want people to realize that you can have what you want. You can make the living exactly how you want to, but you just got to be able to first, I call it the demon in the back of the head. You got to get rid of that imposter syndrome, get rid of that demon in the back of your head that's telling you that you're not good enough, you're not worth it, you can't do it, whatever. Stop listening to that and be willing to just make a little bit of effort and take the road less traveled. I am so confident that most people will find that they find a lot more joy in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love everything about that, because if we think back historically, most of the things that were like, oh my goodness, this was amazing. Like all these Apple products that we carry around in our pockets everywhere, no formal degrees. No, I got this X, Y, and Z. I checked off all these boxes. And so I love that the journey, because for me, that's such an important thing of like, what are we doing actually on the journey, instead of looking at the end goal of, I'm going to make my first $1 million. I'm going to have this successful business, just doing the thing that lights you up and figuring out how to make that work. So Absolutely. When it comes to you as a creator and part of your business being a career coach, how do you help people when they've been told their whole entire lives, you can be anything you want, as long as it's a teacher, accountant, a firefighter, any of these things that we are accustomed to as quote unquote careers?
Yeah, I think, and I'm not sure if this is the best approach, but I always tell people that I'm a living example. I'm a product of homeschooling. I have not set foot in a classroom since I was 11 years old. And, there's a stigma behind that, but I think the stigma is slowly changing, which is another conversation entirely. But telling people that, yeah, I'm a product of homeschooling. I didn't graduate high school. I didn't graduate college. I didn't get a degree. I don't have a certificate. All of these things I tell them, and then I say, look what I've been able to do. And if someone that has that big of a disadvantage can do it, there's no reason why you can't. So that's how I usually approach it. And you'd be surprised about, especially in my content and with my audience, there are people that follow me, or I think almost just to try and be that conflicting voice, like, no, what you're saying cannot be true, Braxton. And it's an interesting conflict because I encounter it more than some people might think. A lot of people want to argue with me and debate that what I'm saying is just not possible. And I'm not saying that it doesn't take work and it doesn't take effort and it doesn't take some thought and intention behind it, but it's totally possible and anyone can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my background, like I was homeschooled here and there. I coached homeschool debate in college, and some of the smartest people I know, also some of the most awkward people I know in some cases, but also some of the most outgoing people that I know. So I think that you're right. There is this stigma that if you've been disadvantaged in any way that people have thought about, that you tend to be put to the back burner. Mm-hmm. And I think we're finally starting to realize that you don't need to go to an Ivy League school. You don't need to have that Harvard certificate that we can all technically get in a month if you go online and pay $400 for stuff. It's being like, what do I actually bring to the table as a human? And finding ways, like you said, to spin it in your favor of, you know, I'm doing these things. I worked for this company. I figured these pieces out. And now I can do what I want because I've gained the knowledge, and maybe looking at it from a knowledge base of how do I build what I want, as far as, for lack of a better term, like a resume of the things that you need for whatever you want to do with your life. And then getting to experiment a little bit, because I'm sure just like within our community, there's lots of people who either have full-time jobs that they're like, I hate this and I'd rather not do this and get up on Monday every single day. Or the people that are like, I'm trying to experiment because I'm not exactly sure what I want to do. So I'm just kind of going in the direction because I have to pay my bills.
Very much so. It's very interesting. What I've learned over doing hundreds of resume reviews and hundreds of coaching calls with people, and even in my content with all the people that I interact with, there's a very simple, basic question that almost no one seems to ask themselves. And when I ask the question to people, they actually have to pause for a while and think about it. And the question is, you know, why do you not think about where you want to go and then reverse engineer your stepping stones to get there? What are the milestones to get there? And people almost never have an answer. And it's interesting to see. It's like they almost play the hand that they're dealt and don't think about how they can work to get a different hand entirely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So classic Stephen Covey.
There you go.
End in mind. Mm-hmm. First thing that they teach you in business school, which is something that even businesses, big and small, don't do. Mm-hmm. We're like, we want to get to this destination. We want to make these things happen, but then we don't even know the steps to get there. We just keep buying a course or following that next big guru, trying to figure out, like, what did they do? What's their little secret? Maybe they'll just tell me how to get there, instead of saying, well, what is this for me? And how does that look like? And I love that you think about that. And I think that there's so many things in everything that you've said so far that is inspiring for people that feel like they're the underdog.
That is very much my audience, are the underdogs, I think, because they're the ones that feel lost in a way. And I think to a degree, a lot of people feel lost in their careers because this is such a pervasive problem. And it doesn't even, you know, it's not restricted to careers either. To your point, it's people with their education or with their job or their business, or, you know, even raising a family. I think we have this weird human tendency to not think of the end in mind. And it can be detrimental to us if we don't stop and recognize it. Yeah, it's a difficult challenge for some people. And what I love is that it's when people experience this paradigm shift where they start thinking that way, things change very quickly. I don't often promote this, but most of my career coaching clients achieve their goals within 3 or 4 calls with me, and that's it. So in a way, it's not that lucrative a business for me because I don't keep the client that long, but I'm okay with it. And that's why I say that it's my mission, because so many people just need that paradigm shift. And it's amazing to see that when they understand it, just how fast things can take off for them.
Mm-hmm. So what would be somebody who's listening who's like, okay, well, it sounds great, Braxton, to think about the end in mind, but I'm not even sure what the end should look like. I'm trying to create a business. I'm trying to make money. There's so many things that I have to do, the software and the technology, and even just putting something like a podcast like this together has so many steps connected to it. For those people who are still trying to figure out exactly where they want to land, what would be your first, I'm standing in the elevator with you, advice for them?
I would tell you, go understand what Jim Collins talks about. He's a best-selling author. He wrote the book Good to Great. And in that book, he coined the concept, the personal hedgehog. And he tells the story, just some background to it. He tells a story about a fox that is trying to eat a hedgehog. And the fox is sly, the fox is clever, and the fox tries all these different tricks to try and thwart the hedgehog to eat the hedgehog. But the hedgehog stumps the fox every time, because the hedgehog just has this one best in the world trait that the fox can't get around. And what, in the case of the hedgehog, is that it rolls up in a ball and its spines face outward, and the fox can't even bite it or to eat it. And so Jim Collins talks about this exercise of doing a personal hedgehog, finding out what it is that your best in the world trait is. And he explains that you draw a Venn diagram, and without going into too much detail, you identify what your passion, your skills, and your motivation are. And when you outline those three things, the center of that Venn diagram is what you might want to start focusing on. And this is actually an exercise that I do with all my career coaching clients, because they struggle with this very thing. And if you were to follow my TikTok, you see me talk about it once in a while too. But it's a very interesting, very kind of exciting concept that once you, and it takes a couple of tries of doing this exercise to maybe figure it out for yourself. But once you do, I think it's very enlightening for people. And I see it time and time again. It's very exciting for people to kind of pinpoint that down. And it's a great exercise to do for that.
Yeah. Well, and for those people who are listening and watching who have followed Top Shelf for quite some time, we are obsessed with frameworks and how those work and really making our life more into pictures. So I think that that's a really great example to give people, because it's so familiar for our community of this works for your business and how you're building things and what you're talking about in your main points. And it works for what you actually should be even focusing on in the first place. Yeah. And I think that a lot of us, kind of like in Friends, we're all trying to just pivot, and then we pivot some more, and then we pivot some more until we break our couch. And you're like, well, I guess we don't need to pivot anymore because we don't even know what the hell we're doing. Right. And so finding that happy medium of getting your couch up the stairs without falling apart in the process. And I think that many creators, we get so bogged down by, well, everybody, the market's so saturated. There's so many people doing this. Who's ever going to hear me? How am I ever going to get out there? And it's the same thing within getting a job for those looking for one. There's so many people applying. I already see that on LinkedIn that 50 people have applied for this position. And so differentiation is really important for people. And I think that there's a lot of people that you work with that have had those struggles, as well as finding ways to do that. So how would you give some tips on that as well?
I think it's important that so as an example, one of the ways I differentiate myself and offend a lot of people in the process, but I'm okay with that, is that it's part of my marketing and promotion of my services is I tell people that resume writing services are a scam. And the reason is, without going into a ton of detail and boring you with it, is that the whole concept of hiring a resume writer to help you with your resume completely flies in the face of how the actual hiring process works. So I turn business away all the time because I could write a really good resume for a customer, but that doesn't actually help them that much. And I'm not saying that, if someone can improve your resume, that it's not useful, but they're charging you a very high fee for something that is actually not as effective as you think it might be. And so that's how I differentiate myself. So I would say, as a tip to differentiate yourself, whether it's in your work, in your job, in your business, whatever, find something that is a unique perspective of yours that you've learned to be a truth, and go all in on that. Because if you do, I think when people see, whether it's clients, customers, coworkers, whatever it is, when they see that passion behind it, then I think that there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for, I've lived this, and here's why I know this is true.
Yes. Well, and Brandon Lucero talks about this, and they're called thought reversals of what ruffles people's feathers just enough, not to cause conflict on purpose, but to say, I've seen this not work. I've seen that this doesn't actually work the way that people want it to. Or it's that Inigo Montoya. You keep using that word, and I don't think you actually know what it means.
Right.
And I say this a lot with funnels. Keep using that word, and it doesn't work like you think that it does.
Mm-hmm.
And you having somewhat of a funnel background, that is kind of a nice thing for you to understand because you see the world from a lot of different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And so as far as, I know we kind of talked about pre-call millennials and Gen X and Gen Z, and what does that look like? I'd love to just get your opinion on that and not lead you in any direction.
Okay. This is something that I'm very opinionated on because I think what has happened. So I dabble in, I love dabbling in history, mainly American history, but from the context of how did our country get built through business, through the economy and things like that. And I love the study of the Industrial Revolution because it showed us what happens when systems and processes get put into place and what happens when you put cogs into a machine and everything starts working. The problem now is that we have something called the internet that kind of democratized a lot of different industries and revolutionized and created new ones. So we spent 50, 60, 70, 100 years of just stuff, of the Industrial Revolution, of just being a cog in a machine, of just conforming. And while it worked, we're understanding, because of how the internet has democratized everything else, that there's this whole other world of things that can happen and can take place and that can create new efficiencies and create new processes, but in a much more organic, natural way. So I preface with that to say that the last 2-3 generations are all, unfortunately, I hate to say it, suffering from that industrial mindset where it's all about being a cog in a machine. And this is why I'm so vehement against college for 90%, 95% of the population. Because in my opinion, the majority of things that college offers from a career development perspective, in degrees specifically, aren't necessary to get into that field. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so we spent 30, 40, 50 years being told, go to college so you can get a good job. Well, there are too many people we see on the internet where I think that paradigm is completely flipped. And there are more people having better jobs, more fulfilling jobs, more enjoyable jobs that weren't granted to them because you went to school and got permission to do something and have a smart paper to give you that permission, right? So in talking about how this is a generational thing, I think what we're learning now, after having the internet around for 15, 20 years in some form, is that there's this whole other world of opportunity, and it's not centered on academia at all. And there's a quiet, slow, gradual shift happening where current generations are realizing that. And we have the older generations that are still trying to butt up against it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I know we had talked about you living in a college town, which I'm sure will come up here shortly, but I love the juxtaposition that we have here of, I went to college and I'm vehemently, as you are, against most people going because I saw what it did to a lot of my friends. And I saw that, technically I could go get a job in a business, in a corporation doing something and be unhappy. Or I could sit back and go, really what we need to be sending people to school for even just a year is like a gap year where it's like, figure out who you are, who you truly, truly, truly are deep down. And what the hell do you want to do with your life?
Yep.
What do you want to sit on your deathbed and go, I did all the things? It's like the song that's, it's like, I did it all.
Mm-hmm. I just posted a video on my TikTok about this very topic, and I was horrified, actually, to see the number of Gen Zers and even millennials say that you need to go to college to figure things out. And I'm sitting here thinking that is the most expensive waste of time to go find yourself. I think that's a terrible idea. But again, it's that industrial mindset where that's still so ingrained in us for some reason. And that's like, I consider it my life mission to completely just eradicate that philosophy, because I think it ruins more lives than it helps, quite honestly.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a lot of money to spend to get into debt and then have to worry about it. And then you're stuck in the cycle of, okay, well, I just paid $120,000 plus to figure out who I am in 4 years, and I still have no idea who the hell I am.
Exactly.
And now I have to go find a job doing something that I hate in order to pay that loan back and pay for my lifestyle and pay for all these things that we weren't really considering, because we're letting a bunch of 18, 17, 18, 19-year-olds make these giant decisions. And as a lot of our parents were like, yes, this is the way to go. I went to college. I got this job. I was actually a first generation college student. So I was like, oh, it's going to be so different. So it was a flip side of this conversation. And it's not, because it really comes down to that figuring out who you are, but then also us as incoming parents and mentors to the younger generation of, instead of all of you Gen Zers going, oh, those millennials, they're so old. We're not. You're welcome. We created a whole new economy for you to go do whatever the hell you want in. So stepping back and saying, what can we learn from these differences within the generations? Versus absolutely. What are we going to not get out of this older people thing? And, because most of us are still like, in our late 20s, early 30s. So we're still rocking it.
Very much so. I think, and that's all that's the only invitation I feel like I give people is, if you're considering college, fine, but ask yourself the question, what, if you were to do take an alternative route, consider the possibilities, right? Consider what 40 years prior to you has shown us, and don't ignore that at all. And if you're still okay with making that risk and making those choices, then fine, but don't do it just because previous generations are telling you that it's the way to go.
Yes. Well, and if you're looking for the permission slip, this is us giving you the permission slip of, here's your hall pass. And it doesn't have an expiration date on it. So go do whatever the hell you want. Figure it out. Go on and try life. Take a gap year. Figure out the things that you like, because just because mom and dad are telling you to go to school to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it is that really what you want to do? Are you going to be happy? I mean, I cannot tell you how many people that are doctors, specifically doctors and lawyers, who have come to our agency and needed copy written or needed email marketing set up or any of those things, because they were like, I got so burned out, I decided to start my own thing. And now I'm doing the thing that I actually wanted to do from the very beginning. I just took a 10 or 20 year detour to get there. And this is our chance to actually start out right. Because like we said, you're going to pivot. But at the same time, I'd rather have you pivot in something that you're like, I am so passionate about this and I'm going to figure out how to make it work, than, okay, it's Sunday night. I need to take my depression medication and set my alarm for tomorrow.
It's so funny. I have my best friend that I've known for 20 years almost. I got him, he got tired of the corporate world, and being a career coach, he came to me asking, for help with options and stuff. And I gave him some options, and I actually ended up finding him some freelancing gigs. And for a long time, that was his entire income. And freelancing gigs, it was in the business world, it was in the entrepreneurship world, digital marketing, things like that. And that wasn't his background at all. He's former military. He was an engineer on planes, things like that. But he had a very strong core skill set around project management. And so that's how we got introduced into that industry. And he did it for about 18 months. And he called me up, not just a couple months ago, actually. And he's like, I see the merit and the value of it, but it's just not for me. And he went back to an engineering firm, and he has a very lucrative job at this engineering firm working with his hands, because that's what he likes. And so I don't want people to hear me say, like, I'm a very big proponent of finding opportunities for freelancing and things like that, because I think that's how that builds a better economy, quite frankly. And that leads into start growing businesses and things like that. But it's not for everyone. And I don't want to hammer on people and tell them that that's the only way to go. But because in the case of my buddy, he tried it and he enjoyed it to some extent, but it just wasn't his thing. And he went back to the thing he was familiar with and he had been doing, because that's what he realized he loved. So I would, for people, even as creators, even as business owners, go do that. It's okay if you feel like you're pigeonholed into something, want to experiment with something else, and come back to it, because then you learn, and I think you're better off for it.
Well, and it's that idea that I've talked about with several different people, is staying within what you're interested in. So if you're going to freelance, stay within that idea.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to go and find a job, whatever capacity, part-time, full-time, whatever that looks like for you, keeping it within what you're wanting to do as well. So that way you're opening doors at the same time. So if you want to flip-flop back and forth, you're giving yourself options and not looking at anything as, oh my gosh, I've thrown in the towel. If I've had plenty of people that have been like, well, I'm looking for something a little bit more stable at this moment in my life. And that's okay. And I've also had people go, well, I've been in this stable thing for a while and it's starting not to feel right. And I think it's connecting some of this industrialization that you were talking about back to how do we actually feel about this without getting too woo-woo or crazy about it. We've totally disconnected the two. And then we can't figure out why people don't have work-life balance, why they're not happy, why everybody's depressed. It's because we've taken emotions and been like, this is bad, don't have these, and shove them in a corner.
Yep.
But then at the same time, employers have been like, well, we're going to use you for everything you're worth, which is where we get quiet quitting and the Great Resignation and all of these things that are not helpful to anyone, because then it just creates a lot of animosity on both sides, which is why people are jumping ship and going, starting my own thing has to be easier. And like you said, it's not for everybody. And that's okay. And I think that that's where us as people who are starting businesses have to say, because it isn't for everybody, that's great because I still need a team. But how do I, as an employer, treat my team better? And then as people who are looking for those kinds of positions, going, where do I find the people that are going to treat me like I need to be treated so that I can excel in the way that I want to excel? Because if we all, it's that all tides rise, when the tide rises, all boats rise together.
Yeah, very much so.
And so I would love to hear a little bit more about your claim to fame / coming up in the world. We had chatted a little bit about TikTok. And that's actually how we met. So fun, hilarious. We meet all of our friends on TikTok now. Which I absolutely love because it's such a nice place to get to know people's personality, how they are. It's ironically the free dating app of the 2022, which has been hilarious to me. But tell us a little bit more about how you kind of fell into a couple of things there.
Totally. And I very much did fall into it. So just a little bit of background about me. My kind of core original skill set was around SEO and copywriting, and for a blog that I had years ago. That's how I kind of first made my first main venture into marketing as a whole. But beyond that, I kind of hate social media for anything other than than keeping in touch with old friends and stuff like that. I especially hate like Instagram. I just don't understand it. But then like I have this business and I have this, I love creating content and things like that. I did it on a blog for years. Ranked that blog very high on Google. It ranked #1 for a lot of things for a while. And so I was trying to find another outlet and a venue and a channel for that. And, here's TikTok. It's been around for only, a few years. I only got on TikTok this January. So that would be just 8 months ago. But I was very hesitant to do so. However, I have a friend that has 4 million followers on TikTok. And the thing that she does on TikTok is the most unique, crazy, wild, off the wall thing you will ever see. And so I'm like, why? I'm just sitting here thinking, I don't see this type of content on Instagram. I don't see this type of content on Facebook. Why? What is this weird community on TikTok that is finding this acceptable? And being with my background, having no education, I consider myself and view myself kind of quirky in a way. I feel like I'm just a big kid, quite honestly. And my TikTok shows that, I think. So I started on TikTok in January with the intention to kind of just promote my career coaching business. And I quickly learned that TikTok is a weird place, and it's almost the Wild West in a way of social media, just because, I don't know if you've seen this video, Kabrina, but there was the guy that his truck broke down and he had the ocean spray cranberry juice on the skateboard. Have you ever seen this video? It went completely totally viral, like 20 million views or something crazy in a day. And he lives 30 minutes from me. And he ended up being on the Today Show and all these news channels and things like that. I'm like, and all he did was his truck broke down, his work truck broke down. He hopped on his longboard and longboarded to the office, and he was drinking cranberry juice as he was doing it. That was the whole video, and people went nuts. And so I'm like, why is this a thing? Why is this quirky dude, like, why is that acceptable? I can do this. And so anyway, so I started my TikTok knowing that I was going to be quirky but promote my career coaching business. And after a lot of experimentation and things, I was getting really frustrated because I wasn't getting the following and the engagement that everyone else was talking about. And as a marketer, I know you come up with some ideas, you test them, and you put them into practice, and then you look at the results, right? You A/B test things. And so I did a lot of that my first 3 months on TikTok with almost no following. And then I posted what is now become known as my Bad Boss videos. So I posted the first Bad Boss video, and that thing blew up. I don't remember how many views it got in the first day. But it basically is me. I find text threads of bad bosses having exchanges with their employees. And I use the term bad boss just because they tend to be toxic bosses, things like that. And I basically reenact the text message. And I don't know what it is. Actually, I do know what it is now, but people love it. And I think one of the reasons is because this is something so universal that resonates with a lot of people. But so when I stumbled upon that, I realized that people come to me for that, and then they stick around for my actual career coaching tips and things like that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so all that, a long story short, is I was very much struggling with finding engaging content to put on TikTok. When I discovered that, I figured out a method and a channel to do that through. I hit 100,000 followers at the beginning of this month, on the 1st of this month. We're now 3 weeks into this month, and that following has doubled, and I hit 200,000 followers.
Yay!
And it's quite crazy to see because I don't feel like I'm doing anything special. I just figured out a vein of something that resonates with a lot of people. So
there's a couple of things here. I fell into it. Mm-hmm. I tested things, and I don't feel like I'm doing much. And I think that the beauty of those three together mm-hmm. is that now you found your secret sauce.
Very much.
And I think that's what everybody's looking for. You're looking for the secret sauce. Mm-hmm. But you could be doing something totally different, use this exact same strategy, and it wouldn't work.
Yep, as I've learned.
Yes. And so it's like, there is nobody who's going to be able to tell you this is the exact step-by-step process of how to find the best career, how to be on TikTok, how to be on Instagram, how to make your life exactly like you want it to be, mm-hmm. except for you. And you might have to fall into it backwards, like you did with these videos, which I think is just such a cool thing because it is unique. And that's actually how I found you, is mm-hmm. I happened to be like flipping through TikTok because I was avoiding something. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is hilarious. Because coming from corporate, I'm like, oh man, been here, done that.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Yep. Yeah.
So it's like, what relates to your audience? Mm-hmm. What are the things that you're like, if I was sitting at a water cooler or at coffee, what would we all be complaining about and going, oh my gosh, wait till you hear this story.
Yep. Karen up in HR or something like that.
Exactly. Yep. And people don't think about that because we're like, oh, that's just what we do when we're together. Mm-hmm. But that's what we're all starved for. And it's not that we're not looking for the great content, but we're looking for the connection of, oh my gosh, this person gets me. Mm-hmm. And they understand what it's like to be like, I can't stand going to work every day, in your case. Mm-hmm. Or for my people, there's so many things in tech and there's so many things of creating this thing that I'm totally overwhelmed by even thinking about sitting down to do it.
Yeah. Yep. I think I've uncovered this interesting parallel with my experience on TikTok because I'm part of a Facebook group. I bought a course. Like I did all the things that some people mm-hmm. feel inclined to do to find the silver bullet to something, right? And I'm seeing all these other creators that are in this Facebook group. They started on TikTok the same exact time they did. 3 months down the road, I have maybe a couple thousand followers. They have 50,000. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And the parallel that I see is it's so interesting to see my experience with TikTok along with my experience in my career in general. You have to be willing to put yourself out there and experiment. And while there's an element of confidence that I think is required, or at least a willingness to try. But also you can't let that demon in the back of your head tell you that you're not worth it. You can't do it. You're not capable, all those things. And we all experience that. And I think that's what stops so many people from just being willing to try, is that they're afraid. There's an element of fear of being mocked or ridiculed or, told that they're not good enough for it or whatever it is. And it's just interesting to see so many people, I think, suffer from, and I don't think creators are any exception, where they want to do this thing, but they're not completely giving themselves permission to be their true self. And it was the moment that I did that everything changed on my TikTok just by itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think we see this on TikTok specifically. If we're going to compare, I love to compare dating to marketing because it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
We're all looking for people. You're wanting some eyeballs on you. You're trying to find that perfect client or that perfect mate. And we're sitting here and we're like, it is literally experimentation of, I'm going to go out on a date with you and I'm going to see how this goes. I'm going to go on maybe another date with you and see how it goes. And then I'm going to decide how many red flags are there. And in marketing, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to create the content. We're going to see how it goes. We're going to create some more content and see how it goes. And some of the red flags that I don't think that we realize in marketing is, how much time is this taking? Is it actually fulfilling to me? Do I enjoy it? Does it fit into my personality? And if you can't say that all of these are green flags for you, as somebody who is in a business, because I hate to break it to you, you're wearing a sales hat, you're wearing a marketing hat, you're wearing all of the hats, especially when you're first starting out. And if you're not enjoying what you're doing and you're just doing it because somebody told you to in a course or in a YouTube video or something like that, people see right through that. I mean, do you really want to be Andrew Tate? Or do you want to be that dream person that you've been searching for, that you're like, oh my gosh, where have you been? You're so funny and quirky and just like me. And it's like looking in a mirror. And that's what your clients are looking for. That's what your employers are looking for. And I think that if we can figure out how to align that as creators, it doesn't have to be hard. And I think that's the other thing that the industrial piece taught us, is that hard work will get you where you want to go. But the question is what if it could be easy? What if you could be successful? Because everybody listening and watching, you have the right to be successful. You have the ability to be successful. You just have to decide that you're going to do it.
I agree. It's interesting. And that's why I love TikTok, is because there is an element of authenticity there that I don't think we see. And I think that's why it's becoming a big threat to the other social media platforms and how they're responding to that, because there's this weird level of being genuine and authenticity on TikTok that has been kind of squashed on all the other platforms. Like, we know how fake people are on Instagram. We know that people are putting up a front when they post content on Facebook, but TikTok has given everyone this permission and this license to just be themselves. And everyone, and TikTok seems to be rolling with that. And everyone is allowed to be, everyone is allowed to resonate with each other in a way that I don't think we have in 15 years almost.
Yeah. And it's crazy because, we talk about Instagram being this place. Like, I kind of like that Instagram stories have not become a thing, because then I'm like, if you really want to know what's going on in my brain, just go look at my stories, because I've probably reshared something there that I'm like, I want to remember that for later because that's on my mind already.
Yeah. And
there's a barrier to entry to TikTok of, how do I figure out what I want to do? And I think we overthink it. We make it too hard, and then we overanalyze. And I actually haven't met a creator who doesn't overanalyze at some point and overthink everything. And I was like, I'm the same way. I'm like, I have thought of every situation and every outcome, and none of them sound like I want them to. And then you do something, and just like you were saying, I fell into this and I didn't even know that this was going to happen. And if we go back to our dating analogy, I went to this thing and I wasn't looking for something, and all of a sudden I found my soulmate. And we say that all the time of, how do you know? And everybody who's fallen in love is, you just know. And I think it's the same thing in content creation and being a creator and having your business. You're like, it just feels right. And because it feels right, I'm going to keep every day 1% better in that direction until I get what I want. And so I will jokingly, half jokingly, tell people, I'm a girl who gets everything she wants. I get everything I want. Because if I say that I want something, I'm going to put the things in place to do it. And instead of looking at life as, all these things are happening to me, I'm like, okay, cool, let's choose your own adventure. What scratch off ticket do we have today? And how do you can get yourself out of any situation that you're in. Of, yes, maybe you don't have any clients right now and things seem really dry because everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's a recession, even though we've changed the definition. And going into gas prices are so high and this doesn't work and people aren't buying this anymore. And no, everybody's telling me that this doesn't do what I need it to. Like, I can't tell you how many of my friends are actual artists, musically, actual physical art. And they're still making a very good living doing what they're doing because they're like, I figured out what it is. And not worrying about vanity metrics of having lots of people following you is fantastic. But if those people aren't converting into what you want them to be in your business, it doesn't matter. Because we have to have that TLC of traffic, leads, and conversions. And so what is that TLC for your business? And I think that finding that special thing that lights you up and you're like, I'm so excited to go make this because this is going to be the thing that I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. I'm going to send it to my friend because look, I'm adorable. Or isn't this really funny? Or how did I was able to pull this back together? Those moments that you're talking to somebody and they're like, oh my gosh, I never thought about it that way. You could have those moments all the time and still just enjoy being whatever the weird person you are. This is not high school anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have to fit into the clique. You can go make your own stupid clique and have people that you actually enjoy being around, be the people that you work with, the people that are paying you, the people that become your best friends. Like, I ask myself that when I bring people onto the podcast. I'm like, is this somebody that I would go out for drinks with in real life if I met them in person before I ever reach out? Because I'm not just here to have a podcast where I talk about things because I tend to talk a lot, but I'm here to raise voices. And I think that that's something that is something that you're doing too. Absolutely. Of raising people up and letting people find who they are. Because we've been, like you said, squashing that for so long on everything else. So we want to see the real you. We want to see what's exciting about you.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's really sad too. I get more comments than I anticipated on my content where, you know, I'll suggest something as simple as just encouraging people to try something. And people somehow make that political, like, and it's interesting to see that, like, that and not in a positive way, but to see even a simple concept of me just encouraging people and showing people how things can be done and trying to teach a principle. And people are so defeated already by the world and by this industrial mindset that they are willing to become belligerent over it. Like, what you're saying can't possibly be true, Braxton. How dare you? And like that, it's that right there. Like, we need less of that. We need enough people willing to be genuine and authentic in whatever they're doing and just be able to put themselves out there regardless of that type of feedback. Because I think usually that's a projection. Usually people that express themselves that way, they're projecting, and it has nothing to do with you.
Yes. Well, and thinking about the haters, because no matter what you do, I think that TikTok is a great way to kind of discover what you really want to talk about by just throwing stuff out there and seeing what happens and being like, okay, algorithm gods, have fun with that. Bless and release. And just seeing what people say, because there's been content that I've put out that has nothing to do with my business, and the strangest people have commented on it. I'm like, this was very fulfilling, even though it wasn't part of what was making me money. And it makes you start to think of, like, how do I round out my brand of who I am as a person, as my personal brand, whether you own a business or not, so that I can be completely fulfilled with the people that I'm bringing into my life. Yeah. So I think that those are some questions to ask. And then really focusing on what are those next steps for you, as far as the haters are going to hate. Taylor Swift already came up and she told us that. She pre-warned us. And being in groups of people like this that go, oh my gosh, you got a hater. Hey, that means you're making it. You're making it. And so I know you know this, but you're making it. Because that means that eyeballs are getting on you. Because most people put in bad reviews. They don't put in good reviews. And I think if we remember that and say, yes, this sucks that somebody said X, Y, and Z about me. But that means that there's 10 other people statistically that have watched it and didn't say anything, that took it and ran with it. That you might hear back from one day.
Yeah. I love the quote by Zig Ziglar, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but he said, you know, you can always have whatever it is you want if you help enough people get whatever it is they want.
Yes.
And I think that's a great philosophy to live by.
Well, and just helping people.
Yeah.
Because fulfilling to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, if you can couple that with your passion, then everybody wins.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to stick with it and you're going to keep doing it. It's like you see these nonprofits that you're like, oh my gosh, they're changing the world. And it's because whoever started it and is behind it saw the vision and kept running with it and finding that vision for your life.
Yeah, I love it.
So I have one last fun question for you.
Okay.
And then you're going to tell us where we can find you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that we ask everybody at the end of the podcast because I love obnoxious things. I am an obnoxious person. And since we were talking about dating, if humans came with a warning label, what would yours say?
I think because of my upbringing and because of my background, that is very much different than most what people would consider average or typical. I am a very countercultural person, and there are a lot of things in our society that I tend to not agree with, and at least on a cultural level and how society operates. And I'm going to, if given the floor or even a little bit of an audience to do so, you're going to hear me talk about it. You're going to hear me vocalize it, and that tends to be very polarizing for a lot of people. So I would say that's my warning label.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that's most of the people that we have on the podcast. We're all like, I have this message. I know this thing. And I know I'm going to make some people mad in the process, but let's do it anyways.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what brings us together as creators. Of we're trying to change the world. Mm-hmm. We created our own economy. We're doing our own thing. And then you locked us all up for 2 years. And then we were like, okay, how do we make this work? Because this isn't working over here. So I think it was the perfect storm for us to get on our little soapboxes and be like, so this is how it should be. Have those mic drop moments.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, it's ironic. 2020 was a great year for me and my business. So
yeah, I was the same way. So tell us where we can find you. How can we connect with you? And what are some last thoughts that you have for us?
Yeah. So I think I always enjoy collaborating and just talking with people on TikTok. And that's where I tend to spend most of my time. But I'm also fairly active on Facebook and on LinkedIn. And I think I've provided you a link for that where people can connect with me there. But yeah, mostly on TikTok and LinkedIn because of what I do with the Career Coach. You can find me there. And yeah, I would just say, I guess as parting words, don't stop for a second and let either outside influence or your own internal dialogue ever stop you from trying things and experimenting and doing, and just don't listen to the haters.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think that our hashtags for this one will be haters gonna hate and can't stop, won't stop.
Yep. I dig it.
So thank you so much for coming on, Braxton. It is always a pleasure chatting with you. And I'm excited for when we get to chat some more. Yeah. But thank you for coming on. And for everybody listening, I hope that you guys got a lot out of this and that you'll reach out to Braxton. We'll have all of his links in the show notes that you can find at topshelfcreator.com. And we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Top Shelf Creator podcast. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Top Shelf Creator. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we would love to see you share it with a friend and give us a review wherever you listen to help us reach more creators just like you.